Welcome to Subramani. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Please share this video among friends. You could share it with enemies too. See, I am doing a small video on introducing you to the US indices. A lot of us have now started investing in the US markets, and we should know something about the indices, not too much. The oldest index I think is 1896, if I am not wrong. Yes, 1896, when the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the Dow, DOW, was introduced, and it had, I think it had 12 stocks. Along with it was some transportation index which was also introduced, and the utility index which was also introduced. This was to track what is happening in each of those industries. Sometime later, some more companies were added. This started off with 12 companies, then another 18 companies were added, and it became the Dow 30. It is still the Dow 30, and it is a price weighted. So a share quoting at $500 will get more weightage than a share quoting at $50. It doesn't matter which is the company, but this is what will happen. If it is there in the index, the company with higher price gets more weightage. It is not market cap related. Now, if in India, it is market cap free floating rate, right? So if a company is very closely held, that 75% is held by the promoter and only 25% in the market, it will get much lesser, it will get lesser weightage than a company where 25% is held by the promoter and 75% is floating stock. Higher the floating stock, they will get more weightage. So higher the floating stock, higher the market capitalization, you will normally get more weightage. But the Dow, being an old index, like I said, 1896, which so therefore it does not have any of these luxuries. They have not made any changes, but the number of shares remains at 30. There is nothing change in the change according to that. It is also problematic because of the price weighted way of calculation, but that's a fact, right? The Standard and Poor, or the S&P 500, was created sometime in March 1957 and was intended to address some of the problems of the Dow. So this started with S&P. S&P started with 500, and it is still 500. Though of course there are other indices also. We'll come to that a little later. So instead of 300, you have 500 stocks. Instead of 30, you have 500 stocks there, which are obviously all are US based, and I think they cover something like 70-75% of the market capitalization of the US. So largely, yes, it covers a lot of companies. So because out of 7,000-8,000 shares which are listed, 500 cover 80% of the market cap. That's good enough for you to track or maybe invest, right? So when you're putting in an index fund, you might be better off putting in an index fund which is tracking the S&P 500 rather than the Dow 30, right? So the companies within the S&P with the highest market cap will have the highest impact on the value of the index. It obviously it is solved some problem which the Dow had. Then in 1971, another exchange came into play. That was the NASDAQ. Before the boom of the 1990s in technology, all companies could get listed on the NASDAQ, and it was a place where small companies got listed, and once they came to a particular size, then they went and got themselves listed in the New York Stock Exchange. But the tech boom changed all that, and again it's a market capitalization weighted index, so rather than the price. So again it has got nothing to do with market float. So it could be but of course only a company with a certain amount of float can even come into the index. So Tesla came in after a very long time of a longish bull run, simply because there was not enough floating stock, right? So these things happen. Then the NASDAQ contains 2,500 stocks, unlike 500 of the S&P. More than half of the index consists of the technology sector, and that is why it has become a short name for the tech. NASDAQ is more a tech index rather than a general index. Although the Dow, S&P and NASDAQ are the most quoted, most seen and most commented upon, there are others. There is, I think, the Wilshire 5000. I am not sure. There is a 9,000 also. I am not sure whether it is Wilshire. So 9,000 means covering all the stocks which are there in the market. That's a full market portfolio when you look at that index, right? Sometimes for smaller periods of time, some companies do very well, like the Magnificent Seven or the Mag 7, which is Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, Tesla, Nvidia, right? So these make up the Magnificent Seven. When they did very well, Mag 7, I think last year they got 111% return, right? So these kind of things happen because the Dow is really irrelevant in a market where the Magnificent Seven does well. Then they create an index of the Magnificent Seven and say how much that has gone up, right? So any of these things can happen. Since you are going to invest in the US market, you need to understand the composition of these indices. That's all. Thank you.